Hello everyone, my name is Muon and welcome to the fourth installment in my How to Crochet for Absolute Beginners series. So far, I've covered these topics in the past 3 videos that I put out. If any of these subjects are unfamiliar to you or you're kind of rusty, you haven't gotten the hang of them yet, that's totally fine, but I do highly recommend you go back to watch those other videos first before coming back to this one, because I'm not going to be going into too much depth about all the subjects that I've already covered. Rather, I'm only going to be briefly recapping the ones that overlap with the techniques that I'm going to be showing you in this video. Today, we're going to be venturing into some new territory with crocheting in the round and amigurumi. Typically, when we crochet, as I've shown you in previous videos, we go sort of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth along a horizontal axis. But when we crochet in the round, basically as the name suggests, we're going to be crocheting in a circle, a continuous circle. Right? So there won't be any turning our work type of thing or chaining to turn our work, because we're going to be continuously working around and around and around and around. To get started, we are going to have to make a knot. Now, unlike our previous projects, there's actually multiple methods to make a starting knot for crocheting in the round. Okay, so I have my weight for acrylic blend yarn, and actually today, instead of a 4mm hook, I have a 3.5mm hook. This is actually the hook that I use the most often, personally. And this is because, as I mentioned in past videos, when we are doing amigurumi, it can be nicer, neater, cleaner to have tighter stitches, less space between each stitch, and we achieve that by kind of either being tighter, having more tension when we are crocheting with a larger hook, which I don't recommend because, again, double tennis elbow, or you can do what I'm doing right now and sizing down, having a smaller hook. So 3.5 in this case instead of 4mm. And if you hear any sort of like whirring sounds or anything like that, it's because I think someone's mowing their lawn and it's really loud. Okay, so we're going to start off with a slip knot. We grab our 2 crabby fingers, tail end of the yarn drapes over, right? We're going to grab the tail, cross it over the ball yarn so that we have an X, 2 crabby fingers, grab the ball yarn, pull through this loop, tail pulls tight. Now we have the slip knot, put our hook through, we pull the ball end tight, 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 but not too tight, just tight enough, right? And now we have our slip knot. We're going to set up our hand. We go over the pinky, under the pinky, over the pinky, behind our 3 fingers, and grab with whichever fingers are comfortable for you, but I like to use my thumb and my middle finger. We grab the base of whatever stitch we're working. In this case, that would be our slip knot. And we are going to chain about 3. So yarn over clockwise, grab the yarn, pull through, chain 1, 2, and 3. Now that we've chained 3, instead of, as I typically do, turning our work and then working into the back spines, we're actually just going to make our lives easier and put our hook into the V here, right? Into the V that is not the first one or the second one, but the very last one. The hook that, the chain that is closest to the tail end of the yarn and furthest from our hook. We're just going to put our hook into the front loop of that stitch. And we are going to yarn over and just pull through both of these stitches, right? Until we have this kind of clumpy thing. Let me just show you again. All right, so we have our chain 3. We're going to skip the first 2, or the first however many is your preference. We're just going to go into the last one. We're going to go into the back loop of the V, right? Now we have 2 loops on our hook, and we're just going to yarn over and pull through both of them, kind of like making a slip stitch. And so we have this clumpy thing, but what essentially happens is that when we go into this space that is created, this is almost like a circle or a loop or a hoop or something like that, right? So it's kind of hard to see because it's so small, but the reason it's small is because we don't want to see it after we finished our work. So we are going to take our hook and then put it in to the center of our loop thingamabobber, right? As you can see, we go into the center, right? And we're going to yarn over, pull through the whole loop, and we're gonna have 2 loops on our yarn, loops of yarn on our hook, and we're just gonna make a single crochet, right? And then we're going to go back into that same center circle, yarn over again, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, single crochet. And then we're gonna do that again. Go through the center, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, single crochet. And again. And we're just gonna do this so that we have a total of 6 stitches. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we have 6. And this is going to be the start of whatever type of circle or, you know, coaster, ball that you're going to be making in the round. Notice how I'm actually going to be able to keep going forward and forward and forward and forward to keep going around and around and around in a circle. Now, I actually don't prefer starting with this method because, as you can see, there is a pretty pronounced hole, right, that we worked into multiple times. And if this tiny hole doesn't bother you, that's fine. In fact, when you weave in your tail, you can kind of cover it up. But I actually don't like to do it this way because of this hole, right? So I'm actually going to take that apart. And now we are going to do the magic circle, which is a little more complicated. First, I'm going to show you what a magic circle actually is, and then I'll take you step by step through the process so that you can be able to do it yourself. So when we make a magic circle, we have not only the loop that is on our hook, right? It's kind of like a slip knot that has a little circle front, right? So this circle, you can actually pull the tail end of the yarn and adjust the size to make it smaller, or you can pull it out to make it larger. And this is particularly helpful when working in the round. This is the reason why I personally prefer to do the magic circle over any other types of starts for working in the round, because once I worked all of my stitches into this circle, or into this loop, I can pull the tail end tight, as tight as I can, as tight as I want to, and essentially shrink that center circle space, that hole from what you saw before, into virtually nothing, so you won't be able to see it. And this is really helpful when we have finer weight yarns, but I've heard from people who exclusively work or primarily work with chunky yarn that magic circles are actually a little inconvenient, because when you have a really chunky yarn, what you want is more stability than the ability to adjust the circle. So they would use something like the foundation chain slip stitch because it holds it tight, and they don't have to worry about that center hole because their yarn is just so thick that it just hides everything. So it really depends on A, your preference, and B, kind of what weight of a yarn that you're using. Okay, so now you're gonna learn how to do that yourself. I'm gonna take my 2 crabby fingers of my non-dominant hand, and instead of pulling the tail end and making it, draped over or away from us, we're going to actually have it pointing more towards us. The ball end is going to be away. And instead of draping, we're going to take our 2 crabby fingers and we're just gonna hold on to the yarn. So the tail is going to be kind of facing down, and the ball end is going to be either up or away from us, however you would like to consider that, right? And then now what we do is, optionally, I like to hold the tail end as a sort of anchor with my 2 fingers here, my middle finger and my ring finger, just to hold on to it while I do this part. And I'm going to take the ball end of the yarn, and I'm going to rotate or wrap it around my index finger clockwise. So it would be out, down, under, up, and then I will be making an X shape overlay over the tail yarn, like this. So that would be a cross. See how I have an X here? I'm gonna do that again. So tail down, ball end up or away, hold on to it, that's optional. And we're going to go clockwise, out, down, towards us, up, and then lay it across to make an X. See that X? All right. And then one final time, I'm gonna show you one more time. Down, up or away. Hold on to it, that's optional. And then we're gonna go slowly clockwise, up, cross, over, so we have an X, right? And I'm gonna actually put my thumb right onto this intersection to hold the X for me. And I'm going to let go of the tail yarn, because we're gonna ignore it for a little bit. And instead, I'm going to anchor the ball yarn with these two fingers to hold it, because I want to create a sort of tension here. Now that we have this X, what we do is we take our hook, and we are going to go into this loop of the X, right? The upper right hand side of the X, if you think about it being divided into 4 sorts of lines, right? So this part of the X, and it's essentially the part that is trapped under the ball end of the yarn, right? So I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to go under that part of the X, right? Again, here, X here, it's going to be top right. And I'm going to take my hook and just yarn over, grab, you don't even actually have to yarn over, you can just grab, going counterclockwise, grab this ball end of the yarn that you created the tension with your fingers and pull it, and I'll show it from this angle, right? You're going to pull it through this space or this loop, right? What this loop is the one that you basically made, right, when you were crossing over. You just made this loop that ends in an X. So I'm going to show you again. We're going to grab this yarn counterclockwise, if you would. You're kind of just hooking it over, and you're going to pull it through the X loop, right? And my hand basically goes down, right? When I pull it through, I'm hooking down. My hand is pulling down and my wrist is kind of like bent, right? Now I have this loop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my hand back into its upright position by going clockwise, kind of like that. And now I have a loop with an X on its own. You can see that. And from here, what we do is we take our hook, we yarn over, I like to yarn over clockwise. We're going to grab this, again, the tension yarn, and pull it through this loop almost as if it is a slip knot. And it kind of is a slip knot, right? I'm going to show you that whole process again because I know it can be kind of complicated, right? This part I've shown you a couple times, so we're going to speed up through it. And now we have this yarn away from us, this tension yarn. Take our hook, go under, right? Under the top right hand, sort of hand of the X. You can think of it as like 2 hands and 2 legs, right, of a stick figure. We're going to hook and grab this yarn that is being anchored, right? Just grab it. We're going to pull it through this space. Our hands can be downwards, right? Because we don't want to have anything crossed yet. And now we're going to upright our hand, and that's going to turn the yarn and make a loop and an X. I'll show you this part again. Go through the top right hand of the X, grab the anchor yarn, pull it through, our hand sort of angles down, and we turn back into the upright position by going clockwise. We take our hook, yarn over, pull through the loop, and then pull tight, almost like we have a slip knot, because we kind of do. We're going to pull the ball into the yarn. Tight, 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 tight. Don't pull it too tight. Don't pull it too tight, but kind of not too loose either. And actually, I'll just pull this little tail yarn out of the circle so that we just have this full circle, right? And that is the magic circle. Now what we are going to do is set up our hand, so over the pinky, under, up, behind the 3 fingers, and what I'm going to do is, instead of holding onto the base of the stitch or the base of the knot, I'm just going to hold onto this circle and kind of ignore this tail here. And I am going to take my hook, put it into the circle. In fact, it's actually very easy to see this circle now. It wasn't before when we had the clump, right? So this is another benefit of the magic circle. You can just clearly see that you go into this loop. We're going to yarn over clockwise and pull through, pull up through, and have 2 loops, and we're going to make a single crochet. And then we're going to do that again. I'm going to go through the circle, yarn over clockwise, pull through the circle, pull up a loop, 2 loops on the hook, pull through. It can be a little hard to keep your tension consistent when you're working in the round, but with practice you'll get used to it. So again, clockwise, pull through, pull up, 2 loops, pull through. And I'm just going to do that so that I have 6 single crochets in my circle. All right, let's do 4, 6. All right, so now we have these 6 stitches, and you might be thinking, you lied to me. Muon, you lied. There's so much space. This space is giant, and then now there's this little section over here, and it's like, oh, it's not a circle at all, right? But actually, what we can do is, I'm going to pull this so it's a little anchored, take the tail end of our yarn, and you can just pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, tight, 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 and bam! That circle is virtually gone, right? Actually, it kind of is. It's basically invisible, right? You can't see it anymore. We've gotten rid of that excess little bit of yarn that was falling after all the stitches, right? And now we have our start. Hi everyone, Editing Muon here. So originally I was going to put knots, increasing, basic working in the round, and decreasing to close all in one video, and then as I was working, things got longer and longer and longer and longer, so I figured for the sake of everybody's sanity and attention spans, I would just cut this into 2 parts, so look out for the next one. With all that being said, I've been Muon, and I will be wishing you all of the happiness in the world. I hope you have a nice day.